Zacky Vengeance from Avenged Sevenfold. Now, the band has a brand new single out called Magic, but we've got something really crazy to talk about today because you've got a brand new record coming out as Zachary Baker. It is called Darkhorse, and the new single is out everywhere now. And what can you tell me about this brand new project, bro?
Honestly, it just came from just a place inside of me that I didn't fully know existed. It was just this longing to create something using my own voice, telling my own story, adhering to the rules that I wanted to follow, which are far different than you'd get from a lot of producers or a lot of record labels, and just taking everything that I've ever learned from the entirety of the first time I ever picked up a guitar to the first time we ever filled up our van with gas and drove on the back roads using a shitty old Rand McNally map to get to the next city, and driving across the country, stopping every single place, the fights we would get into, the stories that we would have, drunken nights, just everything. I wanted to capture all of that, stories of falling in love and stories of loss and all the heartache that I've, like everything that's real about me, but I wanted to sing it in my own voice, which is something that I never really loved. I never really liked my own voice. So I was like, I don't have one of these great voices, like a great rock singer or a great country artist. They're all these pitch perfect vocals. And then I was like, but I got to get it out of me. And I didn't know why or how it even came about, but it was literally like a therapy session. And
that's amazing. And it's obviously a different style. It's like a little Southern rock, a little Western, a little bit of country music. It's sort of all over the place. And I like to ask people about their musical inspirations, particularly going back to the beginning. And, for you growing up, I've talked to M Shadows, and he spoke of his upbringing, gave us a little bit of his perspective on his relationship with you and all of that. And like when you were growing up, what were some of the artists that inspired you to start your musical journey?
Oh, my musical tastes were all over from the beginning, but it wasn't until I went to my first punk rock concert, and it was a bunch of like local bands. I was living outside of Seattle at the time. I was, maybe 13 years old, and my sister took me to the Green River Community College to go see these punk bands. And I loved listening to Rancid and NoFX and Bad Religion. And like I would bleach my hair and put it in spikes. And like I was still really into skateboarding at the time as just a kid. And I loved these bands. And I went to this concert, and I ended up in the mosh pit, and it was like the music was way too loud. It was way too noisy. It was played poorly. I was getting thrown around. It was the best experience of my entire life. And I fell in love with music. Right away, we were, me and my parents were walking around a mall, Christmas shopping around the time of my birthday. And we walked into a music store, and I just saw a guitar. It was a right-handed Fender Squier. I didn't know that I was left-handed. And we walked in the store, and I just, like, my heart sank because I remember the band's playing a guitar that looked like this. And he's like, "Would you want to try it?" And he hands it to me. I grab this right-handed guitar. It's upside down. The guy that worked there was like, no, you're holding it the wrong way. And I was like, well, this is how I want to hold it. He's like, well, we don't have any left-handed guitars. I was like, what's a left-handed guitar? Like, I don't know. I had no clue what I was doing. So I went home. I took my dad's old acoustic guitar, turned it upside down, and started trying to learn some of the punk rock songs one note at a time. The guitar is actually over there. I smashed it when I was in high school, when I was drunk with my friends. But I fell in love with music then. It was punk rock that really captured my heart. Bands like Social Distortion, obviously the Misfits are one of my favorite bands. But what's odd about it is that I heard Ghost Riders in the Sky from Johnny Cash, and it blew my mind. It was so cool. And my grandpa heard that I like Johnny Cash. He grew up with that shit. He got me a Johnny Cash Greatest Hits. I listened to all the songs. I loved it. And I just knew that I loved music. and I wanted to play music, and it changed everything. The entire trajectory of my life was changed from that moment.
So you had an eclectic music interest. I mean, you're all over the place. You've got Johnny Cash in there. You've got punk rock bands, Social Distortion. And so you start playing guitar and, were you doing sports or anything growing up as well?
Yeah, I was like, one of my biggest passions was baseball, and it was something I was really, really good at. I took it as far as I could take it. I still love it, and it was so much fun. And, I coach with my children now, and I still absolutely adore it. And it was the one and only thing that could take away my focus from, one of my first true loves, which was baseball and sports, and give me the same amount of excitement or more. And right about the time I got my guitar, my parents, my dad's job changed. We had to move back to California, and I'd spent a lot of time growing up in Downey, California, in Los Angeles. And we moved to Huntington Beach about maybe 5 days before I was going to start my freshman year in high school, which is a little weird. I had no friends.
Ooh, that's tough.
And we moved into the house that my parents were renting. I grew up, I didn't have a whole lot growing up. My parents gave everything that they had, but I was never privileged. Like, I'm sure better than some have it, but pretty poor on the lower end of
like a working class family.
On the lower end of the spectrum. They worked really, really hard. We always traveled for my dad's work. We've lived in Egypt, we lived in North Carolina, we lived in Oregon and Washington and California, and back to Washington and back to California. So I was always moving around. And so it's always been in my nature to want to do that. But I got a knock on my door while I was playing guitar, and it was a kid that was drumming in Matt's band that lived down the street. Just a fateful moment. And he said, my mom answered the door. He said, "Is someone in there playing guitar?" Which is weird. My mom was like, "Yeah, my son." He's like, "Oh, I play the drums." So I go to the door and I meet him. He's like, "I'm in a band. You should check it out." And I was like, "What kind of band?" He's like, "Well, my uncle's in Pennywise." I was like, "I like Pennywise." Like, well, what? This is like too good to be true. I don't know anyone that knows somebody in a band that I like. And he's like, "Come check out our band." So I went to their band practice at Matt's mom and dad's garage. And it was the coolest thing. Matt had the best voice that a 14-year-old has ever had. They were covering, I walked in as they were playing Dear Lover from Social Distortion as a cover. Matt sounded like Mike Ness at 14 years old. And I was like, oh my God, these guys are really doing it. They're making music as a band. Like, let's go. So I started wanting to start my own band, and I'd go to every one of Matt and his band's concerts. And the guitar player of Matt's band lived right down the street from me. And we hit it off within that week. He introduced me to all his friends. Me and him started a band in high school. I sang, he played bass. So right then we were intertwined. And they were playing concerts. My band started playing concerts in high school. And I think we're like two of the only bands in high school that were actually go and like try and book it. Chain Reaction or the Showcase Theater. And it was so much fun. Our friends would show up. We'd get little followings. And, Matt would show up to school with tattoos at 15 years old. And I would show up.
Real tattoos?
Real tattoos. And I'd show up with Liberty spikes and lip rings. And everyone's like, who are these guys? Our friends, around the time of the senior year, they had, real ambitions of going to college. And it was kind of like me, Matt, and the Rev were the only dysfunctional punk rockers that were left. So we're like, hey, should we start a band? I was like, I want to start a hardcore band. I was like, yeah, what's hardcore? Let's do this. And it was just fun, man. Like I long for those days. And like, it's exactly what inspired me to like want to pick up a guitar and to start singing again.